Most Americans are afraid to share their political views, according to a new poll from the Cato Institute. So what does this mean a little more than 100 days before voters head to the polls? Let's bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Fox News contributor. Karl, it's always good to see you. In your op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, you're talking about Joe Biden's lazy new ideas, and you write the following, quoting here, Joe Biden's strategy to become president appears to be A, make sure people don't confuse him with Donald Trump, and B, worry only about appealing to voters on the Democratic Party's left flank. Looking at today's polls, it just might work. Then again, it might not. That strategy encourages Mr. Biden to be mentally lazy while providing Team Trump with openings they can exploit. Do you get the feeling that the Trump campaign is exploiting some of those yet, Karl?
Well, not yet, but I was taken by Biden's appearance on Joy Reid this week. He was the inaugural guest on her program, and she asked him a question. She said, "What do you think of President Trump and coronavirus?" And he just, took him apart from top to bottom with a lot of adjectives and verbs and nouns. Nothing specific, but a lot of attacks. So she said, "Well, if you get elected and it's still raging, what would you do differently as president?" And I was taken by the lazy response that Biden had. Here were his big ideas. He said, we need to do something about the defense. We need to use the Defense Production Act. Well, President Trump used that starting on March 27th to get force GM to produce more ventilators. We need more tests. We got 51 million as of today, over 51 million, 796,000 tests yesterday. I think we're doing some testing. He said we ought to wear masks. Well, April 3rd, that's when the CDC and the White House Coronavirus Task Force recommended we all wear masks. We need to help. We need to provide help for businesses. Well, in the CARES Act, on March 27th, they put ultimately $660 billion of mostly forgivable loans to small businesses. We need to make certain no one pays, he says this week. No one pays in a hospital if they can't afford it for COVID. Well, the president on the 3rd of April said we're going to use money from the CARES Act to do exactly that. And finally, he said we need to have somebody in command of the vaccines to make certain that they get produced and distributed. Well, on the 15th of May, 2 months ago, the president named the commander of the Army Materials Center, General Gustav Perna, as the commander of doing exactly that. So I'm thinking to myself, here's a guy who wants to be president. He's given a softball question, what would you do differently? And all 6 of the things that he says are exactly what this current president is doing. Now,
and just so you know, Karl, I've checked your dates, and you were correct on those. I went through and read your article and checked all your dates. They all checked out for everything. But I want to move on to this Biden-Obama video. I want to play part of it and get your response on this.
This guy has generated a sense out there that people are waking up to, that he ran by deliberately dividing people from the moment he came down that escalator.
You know what it's like and how lonely it can be to make tough decisions where not every decision is going to be perfect, but you got to make them and to take responsibility for it.
He apparently went to D.C. at some point and did this video, and you point out in your op-ed that he has still not sat down with a journalist. He is still not, not taking questions after these economic planks are being laid out one at a time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we expected Obama to be in there, but I loved being lectured about dividing the country from a guy, a former president, with all due respect to President Obama, who called his Republican opponents in Congress, he said their ideas were un-American. I mean, we had plenty of, remember the famous moment in February 2009 when the Republicans try and give him some ideas about a stimulus bill and he cuts them off saying, I won? Well, yeah, you won, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen to the loyal opposition. So, but we're going to see more of this, and it's going to be an attempt to sort of make us feel good about the Obama years and suggest that somehow or another, magically, Joe Biden's going to be able to bring it back. But apropos of the Joy Reid interview, what the heck is he going to do? To the degree that we have an idea of what he's going to do, it's coming from a speech that he gave about the economy, a speech he gave about the Green New Deal, and 110 pages that he and Bernie Sanders and their acolytes cobbled together on what the Biden administration would do. And those 2 speeches and that 110-page paper, they're all pointed hard left. And that seems to me to be a fundamental problem. He's not a traditional Democrat in this election. He's coming out on the far left of the party, and that's going to be a problem in the suburbs.
We teased it, and I got to go, but this whole Cato poll coming out saying that 77% of Republicans, 59% of independents, 52% of Democrats afraid to share their political opinions. I got 10 seconds for you, Karl. Can you give it to me?
Yeah, going to be a real problem for pollsters, because if people are reluctant to give their opinions, we're going to get polls that are somewhat distorted, and that's going to be problems for the campaigns because they use public surveys to help put together their data models for who they have to be talking to and who they have to be trying to get out to vote. So if people are reluctant to talk about politics, it's going to affect the pollsters and it's going to affect the campaigns.
Karl Rove, good to see you as always. Thank you, sir.